It's starting, so I will make the post now on Let's Talk Photography. So maybe I didn't announce it or anything. So it will be interesting if anyone will join this. We will see that how many viewers we have, but at that time, I guess not many people are around. So yeah, I think let's start. And I hope, yeah, it works. Yeah, but I didn't pull the sound up. So. Hello, 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 and welcome to the addendum. Is that correct? Addendum?
Yeah.
Of the last inConversation from last Saturday, which was the 15th of September. We promised that we will do a short, very brief photo critique session. So you sent us, because we did that no, not years ago, a couple of months ago, we did that frequently, photo critiquing of photos you sent to us, and we will be making a post for the next inConversation. So we thought we'll always add a little photo critiquing session after each inConversation, and this is a photo critiquing session. We have a couple of photos left that we didn't talk about, or that we did talk about but didn't publish yet, and this all will be very short. With me, as usual, on the stream, Fern Fernando Cubian Scholar, admin of luxlit.net and luxlit.tumblr.com. Of course, my name's Pete. I like pictures. My photography blog is on tboom.tumblr.com, and my other photography blog is on tboom365.tumblr.com. And I think we're gonna just simply start, right? Fern sent me a couple of pictures that we still have left, and I have one that I was sent for that, and we will be making an announcement for the submissions in case you would want us to critique your photos, talk about your photos. If you want us to keep that anonymous, then send them to us anonymously and have no watermarks in that. If the watermarks, we will know it's a legit thing, right? If some people don't mind, others do mind. If you do mind, tell us, then we won't mention your name, of course, but then don't have a watermark in them. So I chose one photo because you told me that I should choose a photo. So I
No,
chose.
you choose all of them.
Well, then I choose all of them. This is one of
Yes.
the photos that I chose. And well, do you want to start, Fern?
Do a screen share. Oh,
Oh,
you are.
sorry, I forgot
There
to
we go.
the
There we
button.
go. Right. So I need to change my glasses. I'm really
Oh, sorry. That was a really bad. That was a really bad um, sound distortion. So I have to find a way how to mute you in case that ever happens again. So okay,
okay.
use a screen share again.
Okay.
So
Better now.
yeah, now it's gone.
Okay. So I am fascinated by this photograph because it literally divides the canvas pretty much into three sections. And there's this fogginess all through. There's a mood of mystery and almost surrealism to it because it's also dividing the canvas in half in a small section of the image. And then I keep looking at the tree and going, how is it? How did that tree get that way? And yet there's the vertical lines, especially on the sides, on the left and on the right, and then the vertical line almost in the middle. So there's this whole middle of the image play, that's vertical play, but there's also horizontal lines on the top of the tree and the branches of the tree, and then on the ground with the grass, and then the gradual fogginess and the depth of field, which isn't really part of the photography. It's more just the atmosphere, and then the not really desaturated, maybe have been desaturated a little, but there's just a lack of color, if you will. Um, and yet it's colorful, and it's entertaining. It's visually entertaining and yet very somber, and very kind of freaky. There's something about it that not quite freaks me out, but takes me there. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely agree. What I love, I don't know. Okay, yeah, we'll see my cursor. What other than everything you said, what I find absolutely fascinating with the photo is that we have this line that goes down from the left to the right, to the bottom right. So there's this movement on a little hill. So we have the tree kind of on the top of that little hill. So there's a movement from both sides to the middle, and that is not so apparent on the left side because there's a little bit of grass on the left, but here the movement goes down, so that follows our usual reading direction, our Western reading direction, so from left to right, and there's also this almost the same kind of movement. So we have that bow or arch, if you will, on the bottom, and we have the same thing mirrored on top. So if we look at the trees in the background, so there's everything points to that tree in the middle, and we have the same these pillars of trees in the background that give a sort of a framework to the foreground, the tree in the foreground. So I absolutely love that shot, especially also since there's this and that's what I personally love about nature photography, and that's what I try to do with my photos as well, to maintain the organic feel that we have in nature, of course, and um, keeping the perfectionism that we sometimes see with perfectionism in big quotes that we sometimes see in photos a bit out, and that is a perfectly wonderful shot in my personal opinion. It is real, it is living and almost breathing, um absolutely amazingly composed, and as you mentioned, the desaturated feel. I don't know if, just as you, I don't know if there's something, if it was desaturated in post or not, doesn't matter at all. It is colorless, but still colorful. We have a couple of shades of green in there, and the almost completely grayscale background that pushes the background even further away. So absolutely love that shot. So
Okay,
good.
next.
That was a really cool short
We can do it.
we can do it. We don't have to talk for hours. That is another photo that I chose. So, um, yeah, please start again.
No, it's just breathtaking to me. I mean, technically brilliant. Um, and then the what is it? The decisive moment of having that young woman who may have been looking down at her shoes and thinking, "Oh, these do look good with with this outfit," but you know, with those that mound of clocks in the background, and how she's perfectly framed by the base, by that white base, and how she's silhouetted and she pops under that pressure of time. I mean, it gives it this whole depth of meaning that this is something Salvador Dali and his, you know, with his famous clocks, images might have taken a camera and taken. And then the just everything else is just technically brilliant. I love the person to her left. Also, just looking down at whatever's going on. So uh, there's this sense of life happening, but not necessarily in but kind of oppressive. Excuse me, kind of oppressive, which time can be. Yeah, I just again fascinating, and yeah.
What I love about that photo is that it has this kind of almost mythical, metaphorical feel to that, because the all of these clocks over the young woman's head, that kind of it's like a pillar of smoke, maybe a speech bubble or thinking bubble from cartoon strips, and um, it definitely tells a story. And if we look at the people, the visible people in that shot, that young woman, as you said, we don't know what she's thinking about, what she's looking at. Maybe she really just looks at her shoes and thinks, "Oh, these fit perfectly with my pants." But the how she bends her head, it has, and also her back, it has some sort of well, pensive, maybe even melancholic feel to it. And then we see the other woman who is apparently busy with looking at her phone or texting or something, and then this other person. So there's no connection, no
Mhm,
direct connection between these people that we have in the frame. But since the photo is framed in a certain way, they build that triangle. Also here
mhm,
we have that movement, we have that. So it's almost like an arrow pointing down.
mhm.
The clocks and that as you mentioned, bright socket, or how do you call, did you call that?
The base.
The base, yes, my English fails me. And the two people, and then we have that street sign or advertisement sign here. There's another sign here, seems to be some sort of a map or something, and that all points to that woman in the middle. There are two things that kind of, but of course, it's street photography, and street photography is something that we cannot plan, and so it is. It has this immediate feel to it, and this kind of almost like a snapshot character, despite all of the um, definitely um, all of the composition in there. But what bugs me a bit, what throws me a bit off, is how the woman's legs are cut off that way. But maybe that's something I would have probably crop that photo a bit, because also feel that we have that there's a bit, if we crop it like on the left side and on the bottom, so that we don't have her ankle cut off. This is something that kind of mm, I don't know, a slight crop, I think, would make that photo a a tad more powerful. But even like that, also in black and white, that absolutely perfect for that shot. Maybe that's nitpicking what I do, but amazing shot. Absolutely love that shot. But I
So
think
there's
light crop would do that good.
so there's one more thing I really like about this too. If you notice the base on there's the vertical line with the more bright spot, which is the larger spot, and then there's the darker shadowed spot that's almost behind her, and there's that line between the two spaces that cuts right
Mm,
there you go. So that even highlights her even more and makes the way it frames her more interesting
mhm,
because that brighter area is actually highlighting and reinforcing her face and her head, and that shadow play in the back is also bringing in more of a darkness for that bent over, which again, she just might be looking at her shoes going, they are so cool. but but it's that feeling that it gets. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, by the way, about the crop. Anything else?
Anything else? How many do we want to do? And I don't know if someone's watching. Just know that the chat is of course enabled, so you can chat with us on the chat. I have the chat pulled up. So
If we keep going like this, we can do them all if we just do 2 or 3 minutes apiece.
yeah, we'll just see what happens, right?
Okay.
Uh, okay, then let's use that. Um, absolutely. Let me start this time.
Sure.
Absolutely, I adore this photo for so many reasons. That is what I meant, but in a different way with a nature photo, with a fog photo with the tree that we had before. This photo, a photo like that, architecture photo that needs that certain perfectionism, these absolutely straight lines, that's what makes this shot absolutely powerful. And but you see, and there's one thing that I read once in a book about, it was about, well, it was about um composition in for movies, right? How to composing a shot in a moving picture like movies is a bit different than doing that for still frames, but nevertheless the principles are the same. And this is one amazing piece of advice that I read in that very book, is look for the triangles, because a great photo is, or even every great photo, you will find a lot of triangles in there that guide the viewer's attention through the shot. And if you look at that shot, there are so many triangles in that shot that all bring our view to that middle part, that lower middle part of the shot, but it's not that apparent. And that's the genius part of, or the genius bit of that photo, that we don't realize it at first glance how many triangles are in there. Actually, there's a triangle, there's a triangle, there's a triangle. We see tons of triangles that all guide our eyes through that shot. And still we can wander with our eyes through that photo, and still we will always land on that spot. So absolutely amazingly composed. What I also love about that shot, absolutely adore about that shot, is how perfectly exposed it is. We have this amazing variety of tones. The whole dynamic range is completely, um, I'm sure that if we look at the histogram of that photo, that we have every bit of dynamic range that is possible in a photo, um, filled with picture information. So that is not necessary, of course, for a good photo. Don't get me wrong, but this photo really completely gives us all possible information. So that is the cherry on top, the technical perfectionism of that photo. So all the amazing shades of gray. You can't even say that anymore. Shades of gray without having a stupid
Oh,
comparison. But brilliant shot, amazingly composed, wonderfully exposed.
nothing to add except the one thing that really tickles me to no end is if you'll notice from the lower right to the upper left on the wall itself, there's a gray cloud kind of smudging.
Mm,
And to me, that's what fascinates me, is because with all the perfection and all the angularity and blah, 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 there's that human element, because I'm assuming, and if you'll notice, it's most prominent right at the edge that cuts the picture almost in half, which also, you know me, I love cutting the the picture in half properly because you're not supposed to do that.
Mhm.
Yet this one does it beautifully. It gives it a human presence, and
Absolutely.
it creates a sense of imperfection that only adds character, uh, and that balances all of the perfection. If that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I say, by looking closer, I think that's actually a shadow that is cast. And but there's some kind of, well, dirt or whatever on
Yeah,
the,
that's why I keep thinking it's just people, holding on to the wall as
yeah,
they're moving. Because really, when you look at it, I don't know if it would be a shadow because it doesn't quite look like one, and
I see what.
the you see what I mean? And then it keeps on going down towards the right, more or less in the same angle. So I don't think that would
Yeah,
be a shadow because it
you're
wouldn't
right.
follow. You see what I'm saying? But anyway,
Yeah,
perfect.
that,
Yes, yes.
that's people walking along and either
And
their
leading.
bags or their hands running
Yeah.
across the wall and just what you said, the human element. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Next.
Next, then, well, since we let's take that one.
So cool.
Yeah, I like that. It's just for me. It's just there are two things that fascinate me with that for three things actually. Well, four things. No, three three things that absolutely fascinate me with that photo. Number one is the color palette. These pastel colors in there, very reduced, but still that hint of color contrast, blue and that slightly orangish bit in the middle, and then the leaves on the ground, which are also kind of orange. And that was the first thought that I had when looking at that photo was that this is a painting. Of course, it's a painting because someone painted that on the wall. But I thought it's a painting, right? And then I saw the leaves on the ground, which I thought, no, it's a photo. So the harmonies of colors of the really also, well, they're not even desaturated. It's just pastel colors. Absolutely love them. And there's these little smudgy bits on the lower part of the wall that just add even more or organicity. Is that a word? So makes the whole
Make
photo
it more organic.
more organic, right? It's I don't even know if that is that is a minimal, if that would count as a minimal, or if that would count as an abstract photo. It's not really abstract, it's not really minimal, and that's what makes this photo for me so absolutely fascinating.
The nothing to add except my favorite part of this is the little splotch on the left in the blue of a darker orange, which may or red or whatever, which may be the color from the top or from that center. But that just gives it a little pop of imbalance. Along with the on the right under the blue, there's just a line of blue which may well have been, there was a piece of tape there and they painted over it and that's on the other side and they just tore the tape off anyway and the heck with it. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I love all the imperfections all throughout, including like on the very top. There's a smudge almost in the middle, and there's yeah that one, and then there's another one below that on the gray side that's all, and then the smudges. But I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Love the colors. Um, and the sense of symmetry and yet asymmetry as well. It plays with that. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing, that I'm usually one of these people. I easily get thrown off by if the horizon line is not really straight. And that's of course a problem with that photo, because that line here is almost perfectly straight, while the line at
Right.
between the floor and the wall is absolutely not straight. So it would drive me insane having made that photo itself, because it's probably impossible to get that completely straight. So but it works so
Wow.
perfectly here, that because of these slight imperfections, that yeah, makes it absolutely more organic. Totally love that. Totally love that photo. So we're very
Next.
friendly today. Um,
Well,
photos are really good. So
yeah.
let's look at that. Do you want to start again? Yeah.
So, yeah, I
Oh, we have.
remember when we talked about this, and I was not. I still don't know how I feel about this photograph. There's a part of me that really likes the idea, but the more I look at it now, the more of a the more I'm enjoying it. It just makes me happy, and maybe that's all that a picture needs to do.
Mm,
I love I love the sense of curvature, and then maybe that's also, I find that there's a serenity to the repetition of curved lines in it. It's got very few straight lines. Maybe the one on the upper left, that's like, I'm assuming it's a shadow, and then there's kind of one between her arm and her head that just breaks almost the picture in half. But I love the floatiness. I love there's a sense of serenity. Yeah, even the colors.
mm.
There's it's just, yeah, I love it.
That's the only thing that I'm a bit that I don't know how I feel about that. And that's indeed the color. Because in parts I find the color a bit distracting in that photo. Maybe it's the color choice. And I have to say that of course this is absolutely a matter of personal taste, right? So this is not criticism. This is just my view of that. The greenish wall in the background. I don't know. Of course, it plays with the orangish tones in the skin. So it's a color contrast there, but that's what, to an extent, it makes the photo more interesting because
Hmm.
I look more closely, because I say something is, and I have to be cautious with how I word that, something is wrong with that photo, not in terms of from a photographic side, but something makes me want to explore that more, because something throws me off. And that's, I think, it's what makes this photo, other than what you already mentioned, um, pretty cool and pretty
Yes,
lovely, because
yes.
I look closer and I want to know what's going on, what's happening. And so the that on a this is one of these photos that you, if you look, it's just exactly what you said. The more I look at it, and the more often I look at it, the more I like it. Absolutely, you didn't mention that, so I mentioned, of course, you saw that, but the way the reflections of the light, the bokeh lights, or however you might want to call them, that perfectly align with the face or over the eye. Also, give us that direction from the bottom to the optical center of that shot. So this is one of these classic ways of how to bring attention to one certain part of the photo, is just put by
And
putting
to a certain part of the picture that you can't see,
exactly,
because
yeah,
the
that's
lights themselves are hiding. The other thing that I find fascinating that I hadn't thought of is the lights. There's more lights right around that area of her head and her face, and then the
mhm,
other two rows are leading you up to that as well. As so is her hair, and
yeah.
actually so is her hand that you can barely see on the left. That's kind of posed, I'm assuming, or that was just caught in a moment of maybe her flicking her hair back. Because again, it's a mystery. But yeah, I totally agree with yeah.
But here we also have that what we had in the first photo, the fog photo with the trees. We also have these bows, right, or arches here. Oops, what did I do? I clicked. We have that arch here with the hair, that this really bright part. Then we have that the same movement in the arm. And so there's absolutely what you said. There's a lot of harmony in that photo, and curvature, and absolutely, the more I look at it, the more I like the photo. Cool. The next one, we had that one, we had that one. So two things from my side. Um, the mirroring of elements in that shot is just simply brilliant. Also the crop. So the woman in front walking from right to left, which already makes this shot kind of unusual because it's not our usual way of looking. And now, and that's almost a funny thing, because this seems to be an Asian woman, and in Asia, or well, in the eastern parts of the world, there's the exact opposite way of reading, right? So it might be that the whole photo has a different meaning in the eastern part of the world than it has for us, because we are used to looking from left to right. So, and it's one thing that I learned, also in filmmaking. Like, if you this is, some people do that, others don't. If a person enters the frame from the right, it's also all it is always more unusual for the viewer. So this is something, if you watch horror films, the monster, this is not always done, but it's very often the case, the monster always comes from the right, never comes from the left, because that's more unusual for us. So the direction the people go makes this photo already a bit unusual, and makes us look a bit closer. Um,
And hold on, and since you mentioned the way of looking from left to right, what counteracts that? There's two things for me. The fact that it's aquí is a Spanish word. I'm not sure about some of the other stuff. I don't think it's language. I mean, I don't think it's Spanish. It might even be. I don't know. But aquí is like I'm seeing this, but the writing in the back is read from left to right,
right, right.
track left to right. And then the other thing is that I find kind of interesting is that when I look at the picture, yes, of course, I look at her, but really, my eyes, when it starts moving around, follows the bottom left and follows the rail of whatever it is she's pushing, and then follows her hand, and from left to right
Mhm.
follows to her as well. So
Absolutely.
there's excuse me, that contradiction in ways of yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the thing. The lines in the photo, so the composition of the photo balances the movement of the person. And the first at first glance, now I'm in my English mode, I'm UK English mode. The first glance At first glance, I thought, well, the background is uh, kind of tilting back, um, but that also gives the photo a certain dynamic, because it also follows the same movement, right? So it's the whole photo is, I don't want to say unstable. It is very dynamic, and also we have a lot of repeating patterns in the background. So these plastic planes, or whatever they are, the windows, the whole the framework in the background. So there's a lot going on in the photo, and also the her scarf that leads to her face, which is absolutely lovely shot. And also there's some work done, probably probably some work done with the contrast in that shot. So we have no
Mhm.
really we have here, and the man in the background, there's a really some really punchy blacks, but these are really the only deep blacks in the whole shot. So that also draws attention to him. And so the longer you look at the photo, at least that happens to me, the longer I look at the photo, the more the woman in front fades in the background, and it seems to be suddenly all about the man in the background. And then suddenly we see, well, there's another person, um, quote unquote, hiding behind him. So there's a lot going on in that shot, and really a photo that we can look at quite for quite some time and always discover something new.
Next.
I just see three viewers on, which is pretty cool because we didn't announce that video. We just posted it. So three viewers, and it is not even public on my YouTube channel. So it's only on Tumblr. So if you want to join us on the chat is open. So you can of course comment as well. And so I see your comments, and I will, of course, that only works on YouTube because we cannot check Tumblr at the same time. So if you are on YouTube, and if you have a YouTube, if you have a YouTube, and if you have a YouTube account, you can join the chat, and of course give your own impressions as well. So next photo.
I love this photo. I mean, it's very minimal, the tension between the lines and the cloudiness and the yeah, it's just, and I think it's great black and white. I love the fact that there's very little detail of the pole, so it's just a silhouette. Um, I love the symmetry of it, and the asymmetry of it. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's not much I can think of saying because there isn't much to the picture, and yet there is because it keeps me looking, if that makes any sense.
Perfect sense to me. There are also only two things that I can add to that. There's the contrast between the very, and here's apparently my most favorite word that I use in this video, the very organic cloud
Yes.
in the background, which are through the graininess have even more more of an organic feel, something real, something dirty, gritty, and then the pole and the wires, which are, and I'm fascinated by these little thingies on the wire. I don't know what they're good for, but they add, and I think these are these little, yeah, whatever they are, look a bit like fish bones, right? And that little wire that's sticking up out there that is not connected to anything, that for me make that shot. Without these, it would be a good photo. These things make this whole photo to a great photo for me because they make me look closer. And it's and there's one more thing that I want to say is I love the frame. This tiny small little frame
Yes.
around the photo. I'm personally, and again, this is my personal opinion, so this is not carved in stone or that's how to do it or not to do it. It's just personal taste. I'm not a big fan of frames, but in that case, I absolutely love the frame that just, yeah, I don't know.
Well, it looks better also because we're looking at it on a grayer background, so it does look better. But I agree with you. I also think that those little details of like that cable on the left sticking out, and then also on the very top, the little loop of
Mm,
cables that isn't perfectly neat gives it a touch of imperfection that gives it some interest.
mhm.
Because otherwise it would just, it would probably still be a good photo, but it would be just too perfect, if that makes sense, with the silhouette and everything else, because it's just really lines. I mean, it's just really lines. It's, but yet it's stunning because it also contrasts the clouds and the fluffiness and all that stuff, but still has something that mirrors that imperfection in the silhouette itself, if that makes sense. So yeah, yeah.
And also here, again, look for the triangles. So many
Oh yeah.
triangles in that shot that really guide our eyes through the shot. Um, yeah, and I also one last thing that I want to say. I also love that the pole is not completely centered. So that's
Yeah,
also a bit that makes me look closer. So
not centered, and it's not completely at a 90-degree angle.
right, that as well.
Yeah.
So next photo. Oh, I remember that. We talked about that already.
Yes.
Um,
Genius.
Genius, absolutely genius. Um,
The total opposite of the previous one. So very complex, um, and yet and it's funny because the previous picture, this picture, so many of these pictures have had the canvas divided um, down the middle almost. If you look at it vertically, and this one does that, but again, everything is balanced. Like the cars on the road on the left, the road on the right, the expanse of the bridge on the left with all the cable work and all the intricate wiring, and yet you also have the tower on the left that has that same kind of repeated pattern with the triangles, if you will, also as well. Not as intense, but it's still there. And then you actually have the reflection of both of them on the extreme left off the building with glass. Just fascinating. And then the very fact that you've got the the smokestack also
mhm,
vertical in the background. I mean, when you really look at it, uh, there's just it's an explosion of
mhm.
details that all fit beautifully and just make you think. I think this is New York, but make you think urban beauty in a very simple everyday way that this would usually be ignored. The people that are in those cars, or unless they're tourists, don't care. It's like people crossing the Golden Gate Bridge. You know, they usually or the Bay Bridge, and you know they're just whatever. Um, so yes, I love this.
Yeah. Um,
The colors too.
Colors, that's what I wanted to. There's have well, I'd have a lot to add, but we said we want to keep these little critiques short. So there's only one thing I want to add, and that is indeed the colors. Because at first glance, this photo looks like a monochrome photo, which is not. There's so
No.
many different colors in that photo, and which and that's I think one more addition of genius of that photo is that we only realize that when we look closer, when we look a bit longer at that photo. It has some sort of a color shift into a sepia direction probably, but the colors are still there, and that's what makes to me that photo. It's just, yeah, just like with the other shot, this is kind of the cherry on top of that
Well,
already
it's
amazing
funny
shot.
because that sepia quality, I think, is literally possibly because this photograph was taken on a very cloudy day and there's no sunlight, because when you look, there's really not a whole lot of shadowing.
True.
And then what's also really interesting, in all the way towards the back of the picture, behind the bridge and behind the smokestack, there's a spot of a more intense highlight, and then there's the pinker colors throughout. So it might have been even during a sunset of a rather murky uh, day. But again, it all adds. It's beautiful because it all keeps drawing you in. That even that highlight keeps drawing you in and going to the back of the picture and then coming back out and following the bridge and that. So yeah.
Well, I doubt that this is. Oh, could be sunset, but I'm pretty sure that there's some sort of tinting. It was some sort of tinting going on, whether in camera or.
Oh yeah, that too.
Uh,
Yeah.
what I just realized is that that little whatever it is in exactly the middle of the frame, right?
Yes.
This bright spot of, well, some sort of a roof or tent or whatever it is, and it's so um it's just like everything leads to that shot, but there are also so many directions,
Hmm.
lines that also lead away from that and balance that out so that it's not that apparent. I think
Hmm.
another bit of genius on that photo. So and just in case someone asks, we don't get paid for that, to talk in in this we would say that that's why people send photos to us. They don't expect that we talk that in that manner. So we would say if we're really just happy with these shots and we love these shots. So next one, yeah, that's up my alley, right?
Yeah.
Um well, I love, there's a lot that I love about that photo, and I could probably talk for hours about that. I will not. I will keep it very short. What I love a lot, but the two things that I love most are number one, this line of trees that goes up from the bottom left to the top right, and then down again. So here again we have our triangles, right? um, the repeating patterns here in the trees, that I don't know why, but for me it makes that shot almost gives it an almost abstract quality.
Hmm.
um I can't even say why that is. And we have the same patterns in the background here with that slightly snow covered trees in the back. And there's another thing that I love is that even though it's very bright, the sky is very bright, we still have that little that little bit of detail in there. So we do see clouds on in the sky, and there might be some blown out areas. Doesn't matter at all. Um, it just adds to everything. And see, this is the thing. I I don't, I personally, and again, personal taste, not that's how to do it or how not to do it. I personally don't like blown out areas in all sorts of photos. But that might be because I was kind of pushed to during my training to never blow out anything, which is stupid because sometimes you can't go around blowing something out, and it's also a very legit creative choice. But well, that's, if you're trained to look at something like that, you always will realize something like that. But even if, which I can't say here, which even if I can't say that, then it means that you're pretty good in doing that, because yeah, I developed an eye for that. But even if they're blown out areas, they are not apparent, and they don't jump into your face. So here again, a lot of tonality in the photo, the dynamic range in that photo, and it's not always a graphic quality,
Hmm.
like a pencil drawing in part. So love that photo.
Yeah, no, I have nothing more to add. I mean, I love the curve of the road. I love everything. Yeah, yeah, totally. What Pete said. Next.
Next. So there's another landscape shot. Do we have something else before we do this? Yeah, let's do that one.
I love it. I love the mood. I love the blue lights. So this was caught quite obviously in longer exposure, um, but just right longer exposure, because there's the beams of light, if you will, towards the bottom. It has a very somber um, mood to it. The lighting is perfect. The fact that you can't really tell, and I keep thinking that's a person, but you really can't tell.
No, it's a,
Um,
on, if you see, if you look at the picture whole, the picture full frame, there's a guy or a girl, a person sitting there,
right,
and in the
right.
back in the background, I think there's a person as well, or no, it's could be a person, shadow of a person. But if it's a long,
Or just because of the long exposure, yeah.
long time exposure, could be that the person stood there for a couple of seconds and then moved out of the frame. So that's what long time exposures, that's what make long time exposures often so surreal, because there's sometimes just hints of people or things or animals or something or movement in the shot, and when you can't really grasp what it is. So in that shot, if it weren't for the lights, the moving lights of cars or whatever, um, you wouldn't have, or I wouldn't have realized that it's a long time exposure. But
Right.
still, and that's the amazing thing about long time exposures. They have, no matter if you really if it's really apparent that it's a long time exposures, they all have that sort of dreamlike quality to them, because of the micro movements of either the camera itself, or of stuff that moves, because everything is always moving somehow, and that's what captured on camera. And so these long time exposures always have a very soft feeling to it, without losing detail, if it's done correctly, or well done, or whatever. I don't want to put up dogma here, um, but yeah, lovely
So
shot.
there's
Again, my triangles here, right?
the
Yeah.
triangle. I was just going to say there's that line in the shadow, that hexagonal or whatever it is, that triangle back there that draws you to the door, that draws you to the person. So really everything really is about just that little area with that door and that person. And there's even on the left side, right opposite the person, there's a piece of graffiti with an what looks to me like an arrow pointing you towards the right. Um, so it's just perfect. And even the fact that there's more light in the middle of the picture on the right, and it just, which is the way light would work, and it eventually fades down so that really highlights that grayer area, shadowed area even more. I mean, it's a play of light and dark that's just amazing. I love this photo.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I just realized that now, which also speaks for the photo, the unusual crop. This is
Hmm.
not your typical 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 crop, or 16:9. It could be 16:9, um,
Yeah.
but a very very yeah, very unusual crop for a portrait orientation photo, which just adds to. And we have almost no detail up here,
Hmm.
so some people, me included, would have probably cut the photo here, which would have, I wouldn't say destroy the photo, but make it less effective. At least that's how I see it.
No, I agree. I agree. I agree.
All right, and let's go to another. Let's take that one. I don't even know what that one is.
I
Hmm.
just think it's a cool photo of a moment, and I love the lack of detail of the two faces. I love the look of
Hmm.
her. Um, it brings into mind all sorts of questions about privacy and
Hmm.
should we, stuff that I'm big on because of several bizarre experiences I've been through with these things. Including having someone just on Tumblr recently who I took a picture of in the street. Oh, that's me! And thank God it was a nice, it was someone who liked the picture. Uh, but yeah, it's just what I think of as a slice of life. Nothing spectacular about it, but yet great black and white, technically brilliant. The fact that it's the bicycle on the bicycle
Yeah.
ground in the bicycle lane. Um, it's just a good capture of a moment, which is what to me adds something fascinating to it. It's not anything spectacular like the previous photo. So to me, these are two different moments of life that And yet this one, because of her look on her face, especially the young woman in the front, isn't quite sweet. You know what I mean? They're yes, they're young women and they're dressed in apparently their school uniforms, but it's that's a WTF look on her face right there.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So it adds to the photograph. Again, a decisive to me a decisive moment uh, image.
absolutely. Nothing really, nothing more to add other than that I like really that I like how closely it's cropped, probably
Hmm.
with camera. So there's nothing unnecessary in that shot.
Hmm.
It's really in your face. Um, Great capture. Probably I presume that's an analog capture. With all the grain. If it's processing, then it's very well done, processed in a way that at least on my little resolution screen here,
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I
analog,
saw it larger, and I totally agree with you. Yeah.
not easy to make a digital photo look like an analog photo. So if that it was the case, then hats off to the person who did that. All right. What else? Let's go to another landscape shot. Foggy landscape, brilliant in terms of what I love about that is how it plays with depth. So
Hmm.
you really see the depth. If we look at the right, the trees on in the foreground really pop out. They have this even well, we have the orange in the leaves here. There's the green tree trunks here, and it really fades in the background, and that is of course mirrored through or emphasized through the road that also goes back into the mystery of the mystery of the mist.
Hmm.
And there's a
Well,
lot
and it's
there's a lot of detail here on the ground with the leaves, and
yeah,
wonderful play with structures and patterns and
right.
lines in that shot and
And
depth.
triangles.
And
Because really there's the
I,
triangle of leaves on the right, there's a triangle of leaves on the ground. I mean, a bizarre triangle, but there's a triangle of leaves on the ground on the left. There's a triangle, a very sharp triangle of leaves on the ground on the right.
yeah,
And there's also a tension between very orderly, almost parallel lines and chaos.
yeah. That's I think that and the depth, the really the play with depth, that's what makes that shot stand out. The what you said, the very orderly trees on the right and the chaos on the left is really,
And
really
on the right, because you actually have the leaves on the right, and
no.
you also have in the back you have
The
some
trees like here we're really almost parallel, and then there's this chaos with
right.
and branches and leaves on the ground, and here's a bit of here a bit of leaves and here as well, but this is like really like you need
Very
to
orderly.
sit here.
Yeah.
So great shot. And I can't even say, of course, there seems to be snow here. I'm pretty sure it's snow, but I don't know if that is snow on the ground. So that makes me look closer. I presume it's snow because we have snow here, and there's fog or mist in the air. So, but
And I want to add one more thing. There's the sharpness, um, just the right amount of contrast. I can see this photograph being over saturated, over contrasted, or maybe going the opposite direction. This feels natural. I don't know how it was achieved. I don't care. You know how I feel about that. But it just feels the hand at working on
mm,
just feels like I'm there.
yeah, exactly. It's absolutely natural, and it doesn't seem artificial at all, which perfectly works for that photo.
Mhm.
And I don't see any other way of processing for that shot, processing however it's done, whether in camera or later, that would make the shot work as well as this one. And well, I can be wrong, of course, and I'd be happy if someone would prove me wrong, because then I'd learn something, and that I really mean that, and not in a sarcastic way. Um, but I don't see any other way how this photo would be equally strong,
Mm.
other than this way. So, do we have something left?
The one with the young woman in the center.
The one, I think that's also the last one. Okay, then there were two photos left. The
Right.
one with the young woman in the center, sadly a bit small, right? Can I?
I love
No,
the drama of it.
oops. Yeah, let me try to read what's on the sign. Just have amendment. Some could be something at First Amendment rights or something. I presume doesn't really doesn't really matter. This,
And I
that's a fascinating thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's a fascinating thing. Just by looking at the photo, um, I make I create a story because I try to find out what is happening there. Apparently, it's some sort of a protest, right? Because
right, obviously.
hold up signs. There are a lot of people. There's a person with a that man here, with that pink head. Then I see something of amendment right, and it's kind of unusual clothing, I guess, of that young woman. Maybe that's her usual attire. I don't know, but well, we see that photo, right? So that's when we start to puzzle things together and create our own story. And I love the look that she has on her face. It's
Well, the
like,
look that both of them have, and
oh,
really the man in gray with the gray hair and beard behind him as well, behind her as well.
and
They all
that
have this look of looking up and looking out and not happy.
not
Um,
right. And it's
yeah.
it's it's an interesting thing. All three seem to look up, but they look up
Mhm.
in different directions. So presumably reading
Yep.
other signs, but it could be something else as well. And that's what, at least for me, makes the shot very interesting and very fascinating, because I instantly start to wonder, what are they looking at? And
Hmm.
the different looks on their faces makes, but I kind of think that I see something hopeful in the young woman's face, sort of a melancholic view, but also something hopeful. While the other two guys are kind of, this one looks a bit skeptical, at least in my personal view. This guy is rather, I don't know, not very, I don't know, it's not indifferent, but it's kind of a, yeah. So, and then just see that right now, this woman looking down. So very,
Hmm.
we have that gap between these two people that are cut off, so we don't really see their faces, and it's just that curtain of people that gets
Hmm.
pushed aside to see these three.
Yeah. And I like the depth of field too. I like the fact that the depth of field, the people in the front, especially the woman looking down, is the most out of focus. Because it just, yeah, I nothing else to add.
Nothing else to add, right? Then we have the last one, I guess. This is the last one.
I
Yeah,
love it. I love it. I mean, it's a very, again, serene, almost the division of the image. I mean, it's a little higher. It's not quite down the middle, but it's a d- on the one hand, the ship, I will say, or whatever that is, distracts me. Um, but on the other hand, it just adds an extra layer of horizontal lines that stops me and makes me look at it. So I don't know if it's distracting. I don't know if it's bringing me into the picture, but it's a gorgeous photo.
I'm I love what I love. Let's start with I love. I love the tonality in that photo. I love the
Mhm.
way how it's presented in black and white. I love all of the details that we see in the shot. I love the depth. There's also some sort of, it seems to be a layer of mist in the background, that
Mhm.
the mountains, there's a spot of light in the back, and the clouds. Beautifully rendered photo. What throws me off completely, and I'm sorry to say that, is the horizon line, that it's slightly bent. It's There's this slight, just slight little bit
Yeah.
on this, and there's a thing. If you, it doesn't look like as if it's done on purpose, and that's, um I think that's the only that's the only secret to every bit of art or every artwork ever. It doesn't really matter what you do, just make it in a way that it looks like as if you did it on purpose. And if you just make something seem arbitrary on purpose, if people see that the that what is there, that you made it look arbitrary, was on purpose. So the
Mhm.
arbitrarity, I don't know how to say that in English, is on purpose. So
Right.
the horizon line, that really, it really throws me off. I
I
love.
agree with you, by the way. That was the one thing I kept looking and I kept thinking, is that me or is it? But I will also say, I think it's also because of the mist or whatever it is, because if you look at the horizon line in detail, there's different densities and
Mm,
there's like on the left it's lighter, so that could be it too. I have to say
could
that
be.
it's just something, but I do agree with you. It was something that kept throwing me off, and maybe that's why I said the ship, or maybe that's people kayaking. I'm not sure. Um, but yes, I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
I love the ship. I think the ship is absolutely necessary for that shot. It would work without, but I think that's what makes this photo,
Yes.
gives it that little last bit of punch. The problem is with horizon lines, especially in landscape photography, that's my personal experience, and I shot like two or three landscape photos so far. Um, the problem is that since nature is never quote unquote perfect, especially with with horizon lines, especially if there's seascapes, if we have mountains in the back, etc. Sometimes, and that is my personal experience, sometimes things can be absolutely straight, but they look skewed. I had that so often that I thought, this is not completely straight. And then I measured, I put it into Photoshop. Photoshop has some tools where you can really measure degrees and angles and stuff. And it was absolutely
Right.
perfectly straight, but it looked skewed. And so I had to purposely make the horizon line not straight so that it looked straight. So that's it. I can say, and I will probably check that later on the photo. If, well, no, I won't, because it's not my photo.
That's right.
Um, but that's the only thing that really throws me
Yeah.
off. What I love is the vignetting of that, and it's one of these, in my personal view, perfect vignettes.
You
Um,
know, I didn't even notice it. Yes,
yeah,
that's how good it is.
because
Yep.
exactly that's what I want to say. Because at first I didn't even notice it, and then I realized, because I thought, why do I look at that? Why do I look at the ship? Yes, of course, because the ship is there and it's dark, but there's more to that. And then I saw, okay, there's this slight vignette, and if you look at the bottom right, where the watermark is, there's
Mhm.
very apparent that there's a vignette.
Yeah.
But if it weren't for that, we probably wouldn't even notice that.
Right,
And
and it's also darker on the upper right too, just ever so, but yes.
right. And if you look at the background with the mountains and the fog, there's so much details. There's so
Mhm.
much clouds and different shades of brightness. So absolutely gorgeous photo. Absolutely love that shot. If it weren't if it weren't for the horizon line, but well, could be me. But you saw it as well,
No, I saw it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so but again, just our personal opinion, and certainly not something. But that's the thing. I mean, if we and I think we need to, and I think this was the last photo, right? We had all of them, so let's stop sharing the screen. I think that's a really really important thing to have in mind when we are talking about photos and quote unquote rules. And that's rules are my pet peeve in terms of and I've said it a million times. Oh, Sharon is in the chat. Hello, Sharon. She wrote, I see two last photo. Can you start again? Yeah, well, no, we talked a lot already, but the video will still be on, of course, all of the time. All of the time, yeah, all of the time, until the end of time, until YouTube will be whatever. No, I said what did I want to say? Rules. Rules are not photography rules, rules in art in general. These are not rules that someone came up with and said, you all have to do it this way and then it will work. No. Rules are observations. That works. That is a thing that we realize that it will work, and that's why it's put down as a quote unquote rule. um, that doesn't mean that it won't work in another way, but that's just a way to get sure that the majority of people that you can communicate something in a way that the majority of people will get. But if you want to communicate something else, then don't fucking use these rules, right? It's a simple thing. So a photo is not good, or a piece of music is not good or bad if it follows rules or doesn't follow rules. Rules are simply there. It's just words. If you use a word that, if you say apple, then most people will understand what you mean by that. And if you want to communicate banana, then don't say apple. Very simple. Yeah. And other than you want to say, other you say this is not an apple, and you're right. But that's the thing. And if we look at photos and we say, hey, that throws me off, and I think that's the how do you say, the litmus test for that.
Yes.
If it throws a couple of people off, then you might you might decide that you want to change it, except for if you want people to get thrown off. And I think that's all to rules. Rules are tools to be used, and for certain, um, if you want to have a certain result. If you don't want to have that result, don't use the rules. Very simple.
Okay, that's it. I got nothing else to say, and I gotta go.
And I gotta go as well. So thank you to all. Sharon wrote, for me, the rule is there are no rules. That is your rule. I won't
He's a
follow
rebel.
your rule, Sharon, because for me,
He's a rebel.
and my rule is I just do what I like. And if other people like it as well, then I'm happy. And if they don't like it, then please tell me why. I'm open to discussion. If you don't like something that I do, and then if you think I could do, or we could do things more effectively, that it works better, then hey, I'm happy. If you say, well, I just don't like green, then I will say,
Stop it. Stop it. Okay. On that note,
that stop.
goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. And for those of you who watch later, I hope this was something that you liked. And if you want us to talk about your photos, then get in contact with us. Either send me personally a message to @tvoom on Tumblr. So you can do that via the Tumblr Messenger. Or you can send a message to QBN-Scholar, also on Tumblr. And then we'll happily and gladly talk about your photos in one of the next photo critiques. We will talk about photos after every critique. I don't know, not after every inConversation. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know if we're going to be able to do it in October.
That's a question, yeah, but because we both will be pretty busy in October, I hope we can do we have to make a conversation, because it will be the 20th conversation, and it will be on our second anniversary. So we have to somehow find a way to make a conversation, right? But the thing is, we don't know yet whether we will do the critiques in the inConversation video itself, or do it on the same day or a day later in a separate video. But it will show. So
Okay, enough already. I gotta go.
okay, say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all. Bye bye. Till next time. And I will hang up. Stop the broadcast.